Today our learning aim is to revise key, melody and tempo terms, and also to then apply these key terms to some listening questions. So the plan is, first of all, we're going to recap the key terms to do with melody and tempo and listen to some examples of these, and then you're going to practice some unfamiliar listening questions with me before you go and do some on your own. So for melody, we're going to look at 4 key terms that we've done before in class. So we're going to look at the term conjunct, the term disjunct, what a melodic sequence is, and we're also going to look at some ornamentation. So we're going to start with the term conjunct. Another way to describe a conjunct melody is to say that it moves by step. So instead of moving by big leaps, the melody just moves by one step at a time, or by one note away on the keyboard. So this melody is conjunct because it just moves by one step at a time, either up or down, as the melody goes along. And this is what it sounds like. And then our next melody term is disjunct. So disjunct is basically just the opposite of conjunct. Instead of moving by step, it moves by leap. So it moves by more than one note at a time in whatever direction. So here we've got a disjunct tune that moves by a jump rather than a step. And this is what it sounds like. So there's a bigger gap between the notes there. Okay, now we're going to look at another key term with regards to melody, which is this term here called melodic sequence. So a melodic sequence is where we take one short melodic idea, for example this one, which sounds like this. And then all we do is we take that pattern, but we shift it either up or down by a note or a few notes. So here it goes up every time, and it's the same shape, but it just gets repeated at a higher pitch, and then a higher pitch, and then a higher pitch again. So the melody, or the melodic pattern, is just moving up sequentially, which is why it's called a melodic sequence. So the whole 4 bars would sound like this. And that's a melodic sequence. As well as going up, it can also go down. So here's our example of a descending melodic sequence. So this is our original little idea here in this first bar. It sounds like this. And then each bar, that pattern's taken and it's just shifted down a tone and then shifted down another tone. And it sounds like this. And then finally, we've also got ornamentation. So there's lots and lots of different types of ornamentation. We have looked at this briefly before. I'm just going to talk you through them quickly, but don't worry if you don't know all of these off by heart just yet. So we've got a trill, which is kind of rapidly alternating between 2 different notes. We've got a mordant, which is kind of just like a really short trill. We've got an appoggiatura, which is also known as a leaning note, and it sounds like this. And then an acciaccatura looks a lot like an appoggiatura, but it's got a little line through the small notes, and we play the first note really, really fast. And then finally we've got a term, which sounds like this. And those are those 5 different types of ornamentation. So now we're going to go through your key tempo terms that you need to know for GCSE music. So tempo is all about the speed of a piece of music, how fast it is. And here down the side of the screen we've got the 7 Italian terms that you need to know to be able to describe tempo. So we've got lento, adagio, andante, moderato, allegretto, allegro and vivace. And these are in order from slowest, which is lento, to fastest, which is vivace. So we're going to go through what these terms mean, and then we're going to listen to some examples of pieces of music that are at that tempo. Okay, so our first term is lento, which means slow, and we're going to listen to an example of a piece of music which is lento. So as you can hear, that piece of music is moving really, really slowly. So if we were going to describe the tempo, we would call it lento. Our next key tempo term is adagio, which means slow and stately. So it's still slow, but it's also quite impressive and sounds quite grand. And here's an example of a piece of music that's adagio. Our next key tempo term is andante, which means at a walking pace. So if you can imagine yourself walking along to it, it might be somewhere around an andante tempo. Here's an example of an andante piece of music. Then we've got moderato, which is a little bit quicker than andante, and it literally means a moderate tempo. So here's an example of a piece of music with a moderato tempo. Then we've got an allegretto tempo, which means a piece of music that's quite fast. Here's your example. Then we've got allegro, which means a piece of music is fast. Here's your example. And then finally, we've got our fastest tempo, which is vivace, which means lively. And here is your example of a vivace tempo. Now we're going to practice doing some unfamiliar listening questions together, where we're going to hear a piece of music that we've not listened to before and answer some questions on it. So the first two questions, or the first two parts of this question, are just about the very beginning of the music. So question A refers to bars 1 and 2, and question B refers to bars 3 and 4. And you've got the music for this on the screen. And then question C and D are more general questions about the music. So I'm going to play you the extract 3 times with a little gap in between each time. And if you write down answers, and then we'll go through them together. So here's the extract for the first time. Here's the extract for the second time. And then here's the extract for the third time. Okay, so you might want to pause the video here just to make sure you can finish off the questions, because now we're going to go through the answers to these questions. Okay, so in bars 1 and 2 of this piece of music, the music's mainly disjunct or moving by leap. So every time the note changes, it goes to a note more than just one step away. It moves by leap. In bars 3 to 4 of the music here, we've got a little melodic sequence. So in bar 3, we've got a pattern, and then in bar 4, that pattern is shifted down a few notes, but it's still the same pattern. So that's an example of melodic sequence. The tempo of the music, I would say, is allegro or vivace, it's fast. And then finally, the tonality of this piece of music is major. Let's just listen to it again one more time. Listen out for that fast tempo and that major key. That was question 1. Okay, now moving on to question 2. You've got 3 parts to this question. So firstly, you're saying if the melody is mainly conjunct or disjunct, then you're looking at the tonality and then the tempo. So here is the extract for the first time. Here's the extract for the second time. And here's the extract for the third time. Here are the answers to question 2. So the first 4 bars of the piece are here, and it is mainly conjunct. So apart from that little leap there, it is pretty much all moving by step. That's all by step. This is all by step as well. The tonality is minor in this piece of music, so it sounds a bit darker and a bit sadder. I would call that tempo moderato. It was at a moderate speed. And the dynamic at the beginning of that piece of music, it has a P there, which tells us about the dynamic. We can also hear that it was quite a soft dynamic in that piece of music. Okay, here's question 3. There's 5 parts to this question. Firstly, you're going to identify if the melody is mainly conjunct or mainly disjunct. Then you're going to identify the melodic device heard in bars 4 to 6, which are on your screen. Those are the last 3 bars on the screen. Then you're going to describe the tonality, the tempo, and you're going to talk about whether or not the left hand is being played staccato or legato. So here is the audio for the first time. Just have that one more time. Now we'll go through the answers to question 3. So part A, the melody is mainly conjunct, so it pretty much always moves by step here. The melodic device heard in bars 4 to 6, so that's these 3 bars here, is melodic sequence. So we've got this one ascending pattern here, and then it's shifted up and it plays again, and then it's shifted up and it plays again. So that's an example of melodic sequence there. The tonality of that piece was minor. I call the tempo moderato again, and the left hand is being played staccato. So where it's got these little dots over the top and the notes are being played short and jumpy, that's an example of staccato. So that's everything in our video lesson today. Your next steps are to go and complete the quiz that I've emailed to you, which will go over some of those key terms that we've looked at today, and also gives you some more independent listening practice.